Great. Thanks, Deborah. Really honored and excited to be here with you all today. So I'm going to start by just introducing the panelists, and we'll then get into conversation around tech and how that's playing out in the private sector and in the NPO space. So first of these panelists is Margareta McGrath. She's the Global Advisory Partner Lead at Dell Technologies. Margareta serves as Global Advisory Partner. She leads strategic partnerships to integrate diverse technologies and service capabilities. Welcome. Next up is Jennifer Mariner. She's Executive Vice President, Global Acceptance Solutions at MasterCard. Jennifer leads MasterCard's Global Acceptance Solutions team, making MasterCard the best way to pay everywhere. Welcome. Next up is Dr. Christina Yan Zhang. She's the CEO of the Metaverse Institute. Christina is a pioneering expert in the metaverse space, starting her research in 2006 on international strategies for universities and earning her PhD in digital twin application for the construction industry in 2012. Welcome. Next up, we have Vivian Bocha, Head of Customer and Partner Advocacy, as well as Product Co-Innovation at SAP. Her role there involves leading co-innovation projects with cross-functional teams, translating tech into compelling stories, and streamlining go-to-market activities to enhance product value through customer and partner feedback. Welcome. And our final panelist to join us for today's conversation is Liz Santoni. Liz is the Executive Vice President, Chief Customer Experience Officer at Cisco. She leads a 20,000-strong team to help customers transform their business in the AI era through Cisco's full portfolio of AI-enhanced software, subscription, and lifecycle services. Welcome. I hope you'll all forgive me for slightly shortening those introductions. All of the panelists here today have such impressive backgrounds, so I encourage you all to connect with them in some of the breaks we have today, because there's lots more to learn from all of them. We're going to start today's conversation by trying to understand, or at least what I would describe as the case for technology, why we should be excited about it. And after we've done that, we'll really talk about three themes. The first of those has to do with responsible deployment, so making sure that we stick to the principles we've discussed today when we deploy tools like AI. Second, around accessibility. And third, around how this type of work is going to require real collaboration. No single entity or firm or nation is going to drive the agenda. It's going to be a big collaborative effort. When we think about the case for technology, I'm reminded of the foundations of macroeconomic theory, which have evolved significantly since those foundations. But there was this model called the Solo Swan model, and it argued that everything that a nation would produce, and that the world would produce, was really going to be driven by the factors of production, and there were three. And the first two were kind of easy to understand, was physical capital and labor. And the third one was a lot more difficult to understand, and that's technology. And of course, these variables all interplay with each other. But even in those foundations, there was a strong case for the role of technology. So my opening question on the case for technology is, what excites you about technology in the world we live in today? And Vivian, I think I'm going to start with you.
Great, thank you so much. So I think, we live in this fast-paced world, right? And technology is one of the main enablers that we see across various different industries. And I think what really excites me about it is one aspect of really democratizing it, meaning we give opportunities to various different levels to actually also hop on the game and get much more empowered. And I think thereby we really break down traditional barriers, and we're making this empowerment for various different groups possible. And I think just to touch on a couple of examples, right? We have, for example, mobile banking or digital payment method, right? Bringing financial services to underserved areas. We have areas of, for example, online learning platforms, right? Bringing education to other areas as well. And I think there's just so many nuances in these examples that brings the economic value to it, because we also have areas of where we bring down market platforms and give even smaller companies or entrepreneurs a way of how they can act on a global scale. And this is obviously all driven by technology. But one aspect that I'm really passionate about is obviously AI. And I know it's the big elephant in the room in everybody's board discussion and everybody talks about AI. But I want to do a quick room check here in the room. In terms of AI, who has used AI at some point in their private or in their work life? So quickly, show of hands. Amazing, I love that. Keep your hands up, please. Don't go so quickly down. Who has used AI on a weekly basis in their work or private life? Okay, some hands go down. So look around the room. You all are different advocates, because what I'm really worried about is we obviously have a gender gap, we have a pay gap, but we also have an AI gap. And this is by just looking into, you are already so many advocates in this area, but only 37% of women at the moment using AI or have been touching upon it. In the male scale, it's around 50%. So here, just again from my side, a bit of a call to action. You're all advocates, you all have used it. Try to obviously use more, because you have probably heard this before, but people don't get replaced by AI, people get replaced by AI by people who are using AI. So again, that's why my kind of call to action, why it's really exciting. Please start to bring more women also along this journey and help us to really also close this gap and don't leave us behind.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I thought you were also going to ask how many panelists used AI to prepare for this conversation. Other opening remarks on the case for technology and excitement?
You know, I've been at Cisco for 25 years, started as an individual contributor in product development and engineering. And up until now, when you think about it, up until, AI came on the scene, is you needed specialized degrees, you needed specialized training, and that was only accessible to a few. And I think the opportunity that when I think about, democratization of specialized skills, using AI tools is here, which means what it does is it provides access to most of the world, if not all of the world, in being able to participate in value creation. And as we know, when we look around, not all countries in the world are part of the digital economy. And we have the opportunity to do that today. I mean, anyone with an idea with connectivity can do that. But I think, as Fran, you talked about, 3 billion in the world still don't have that connectivity. So if we can solve for that and move that at a global scale, then we're looking at probably in our generation, the potential for AI to be an economic equalizer. I mean, that is just phenomenal. It was great to look around in the room and see almost everybody raise their hands. But you think about it and go, we live in a bubble though. And the opportunity to bring that economic change to a big part of the world is there, because just because you don't have connectivity doesn't mean you don't have great ideas. You just need access and the ability to now do it because of the technology, the democratization of it is there. When we change that in terms of providing global connectivity, it's going to open up the world a lot more.
Yeah, totally changes the way we think about development trajectories that might be not traditional. Jennifer?
I mean, I think really building on the comments that Liz and Vivian have made, what excites me about the technology is the fact that, we're really able to start to claim that digital economy, which in turn is then driving, economic stability. At MasterCard, one of the things that we think about a lot and put a lot of resources behind is how do we enable capital, market access, training, mentorship, digital solutions for our global citizens. Because by doing that, what we've already seen is that we've got more than 50 million micro and small merchants now have been enabled to accept digital payments. And what's really exciting is because of the focus and the needed focus, more than half of those are female entrepreneurs. And technology is enabling that to happen.
I think maybe just to build on Jennifer's point, I guess the other point is just to say that this technology will leapfrog us. So I think I loved the point you made, Liz, about it being an economic equalizer, right? And if we have accessibility for everybody, then it really will be able to enable us to make huge leapfrog changes. And I think about some of the changes in healthcare, in cancer research, in diagnostics. This is going to change how we live and operate as a society, right? So it's making sure that everybody has access to it. And I don't think there's as many barriers in some ways. Like there isn't as, we didn't see when robotics was released or blockchain, we haven't seen the kind of adoption, the mass adoption like we're seeing with AI. So this is a different playing field right now with AI.
Christina?
I want to follow up on that. And you're talking about robotics, which is widely considered as the next major things as a physical AI. But I also want to draw your attention to a particular type of robots on the size of nanobots. So that's roughly about the size which will be 1 billionth of 1 meter. That's how tiny it is. And the beauty is there is a lot of technology advancement on the nano level of robots at this moment. Perhaps one of the most prominent one was developed by researchers at Karolinska Institute in Sweden. And they were able to use nanobots to kill cancer cells on mice with a reduction of 70% success rate. And that was published in Nature Nanotechnology last year with quite significant impact. Because I guess the challenge a lot of societies facing worldwide is we spend a huge amount of healthcare budgets at the stage where treating people with terminal stage of cancer, long-term chronic disease, about 70%. But if we can use nanobots to actually combine with the latest developments using AI for drug discoveries, powered by the super high performance computing like quantum technology. So it is possible that within our lifetime, we are going to have a beautiful situation where we can use technology to really eradicate cancer as well as different long-term chronic disease. And then we might have a beautiful situation as predicted by The Economist magazine in September 2023. And they said it is possible within our lifetime maybe to have people live all the way up to 120 years old. Because currently the average lifespan in the world is about 73. But imagine more and more people can live up to 120 years old without doing Botox injections, because you can just basically use nanobots to inject, those cells which are not useful anymore in the future. And now we will have a situation when you reach 60, you are only middle-aged, and you have another 60 years to go if you wanted to. And then we are going to have a major, societal change, whether it's for new business opportunities, future of education, training, pension, healthcare. The whole world will be changed completely. And I see that's the beauty and the power of technology to really empower human race in a way which never happens before.
Brilliant.
So true.
And it's a good reminder when we talk about technology, obviously, that it's a broad concept. It doesn't just include artificial intelligence. And I know a lot of futurists talk about this really important combination of robotics, sensory technology, and artificial intelligence. And those three things together are really going to be impactful for how the world evolves. We're at this inflection point where the research has evolved in a way that we've made significant progress. And now we're starting to, and we already have, deploy it in the real world with real people, real organizations, and real consequences. And that's why the three themes we wanted to talk about are so important. The first of those has to do with ethical use of artificial intelligence. Liz, I know this is a huge part of your role and your work at Cisco. Tell us a little bit about the work you're doing in that space.
Yeah, we firmly believe that AI's got huge potential. Like if you look at my team itself, lots of people, we have 40 plus years of data, we've repeatable workflows. Those are like prime use cases for AI. But we also know that transparency, fairness, removing bias from it, explainability in terms of you put a prompt in, how did it come up with the answer? All of that is really important.
Yeah.
And for us, especially as a company where we live our purpose around inclusivity, I think Fran talked about that, we design in that all of these principles into our development process, as well as how we take our solutions to market as well. And so this is an ongoing investment. It's not one and done. It's an ongoing, I would say, engineering challenge every single day, because the technology is advancing at such a fast pace, and that same technology is also available to the bad actors as well. And the reality is, AI is not biased. AI learns its bias from humans, right? And we talk about the future with agentic, where we're giving agency to an agent to do tasks, to do complete roles. We absolutely have to make sure it's trained, and we do this ongoing audit to remove bias from it. So a few things that we do today, in addition to have a responsible AI framework that includes all of these elements that are absolutely critical for any development team designing AI into the portfolio, is around how we even gathered the data. So gathered the data from diverse kind of sets as well. And we have very strict data gathering, data security policies. It's one of the reasons that customers trust us as well with their data. The second is around the development, the tools that we use. The third is around testing. We do things like red teaming testing to detect bias and harmful consequences as a result of that. We also use third-party tools. One of the platforms that we use is Credo.ai. Another tool that we use is Fiddler.ai in terms of understanding the explainability on where the data came from, what algorithms you wrote, and the output that comes as a result of that. So that's more in terms of what we as a company do. But we're also trying to influence those who actually build the large language models, who build the systems, for example. And the challenging aspect is that when we work with a number of these companies, it's very dominated by males. And it's not diverse in expertise, not diverse in experiences, I would say. And so when you're training these models and you're augmenting these models, whether it is implicit bias or it's not, that's the way you're training these models. So what we're also doing as a company is how do we influence the providers of the large language models, the ones who make these systems that we purchase, to also make sure that their workforce is a diverse workforce as well.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, that answer comes as a huge relief, because some of the early evidence of deployment of AI really suggested significant leaning towards some of these, reinforcing these biases.
Oh, absolutely. Yesterday, just, we often have fun, just even the fun part of it. We posed a question to the three big models out there, and we said, which one's bigger, 9.11 or 9.9? And guess what the answer was? 9.11. And then when we put it in another model and said, elaborate, it gave us a very, with high level of confidence and an elaboration on why 9.11 was bigger than 9.0. And I'm thinking, wow, elementary math has changed. Need to send the models to remedial math. But this is just a basic example of just how kind of hallucinations or even wrong answers kind of creep in.
Yeah, you lost me for 1 second because I was confused by the question. And I was going back into the philosophy of maths, and maybe there is a weird, there isn't, okay. Jennifer, you've got the same challenge.
Yes.
When you're thinking about data and responsible deployment, how do you approach this at MasterCard?
Yeah, so, I mean, I think the first thing to say, let's level set. AI is one of the most transformative technologies of our generation, if not the most transformative of our generation. And while it's been around for a long time, so, I mean, at MasterCard, we've been using AI for more than 20 years, and the payments industry as a whole has been using it to help predict and prevent fraud and cyber attacks, for example. But the technology behind AI, the types of usage, has completely shifted and accelerated. And as a result of that, exactly to the points that Liz was making, we have to be really conscious of the data that is within our reach. think of the billions of transactions that we process, and therefore the data that sits behind it. We're constantly looking at what are the frameworks under which we can operate, and how can we ensure that the frameworks, the role that we play is something that can be effective, not just for our employees, and it's really important that the employees are brought on this journey of AI and what it is and how it's used, but also our customers, and helping them, handhold them through the process of how can AI impact their company for better or worse, how it can be used by themselves, how they could be impacted externally by AI, particularly Gen AI as it is emerging. But of course, what's top of mind is this is amazing opportunities, amazing innovation, but there's a really fine line between that innovation and responsibility. And there's an intersection point, and we're constantly working as a team to ensure that we are conscious of that intersection point and taking responsibility around how is our data used, who has access to it, how do we deploy it, and making sure, I love the comments you made, that we are being true to the responses that we're giving. And we're not bringing in a level of, or creating levels that create diversity challenges within that. So that's something that's really top of mind for us. But I think this fine line of innovation and responsibility is what we keep focused on.
Thank you. We're still in the theme of responsible deployment, and I think bias has been a really important foundational concept. Another topic that I think matters a great deal, certainly in some of the opening remarks from our participating GCE children, was a set of concerns around the planet and the environment. Christina, tell us a little bit about how we can think about the interaction between environmental protection and AI.
Thank you. I think that's a very important question, and I will try to address that in 3 different key areas. And the first area, I want to looking at data, because we know data is a cornerstone of any kind of digital transformation in modern times. If you have good quality of data, you have good quality of AI, which are less likely to hallucinate and create a little bit problem sometimes. And the issue is, worldwide, we are creating huge amount of data every year. And I think the latest figure is 175 zettabytes a year as we stand. So how big is that? 1 zettabyte is equals to 1 billion terabytes. For many of us who got laptops, on average, the storage of laptop is 1 terabyte. So imagine every year we are creating the amount of data which can be, having 175 billion of laptop running at the same time. That's massive. But the issue is, by 2030, the number of data we are creating every year will be reaching more than 2,000 zettabytes. So we're talking about 12 times than where we are now. And we know in order to store all kinds of data, it consumes a lot of electricity, release a lot of carbon emissions. So how can we solve that? You might remember there is a very famous movie called Jurassic Park, right? And how it started is by extracting the DNA stored in the amber, which has been there for more than 65 million of years. So synthetic DNA as a storage for data is extremely durable. And actually, there has been a number of top universities in the world, including our amazing Duke University. They are looking at how to use synthetic DNA, because DNA, you have A, T, G, C, 4 different sequencing, right? You link that with 0101, the traditional data storage mechanism of computer. And using this kind of mechanism, they have now been able to extract data and put data back inside synthetic DNA. And another beauty of synthetic DNA is it's really intense. How intense it is. It is 1 million times more intense than the SSD, which is widely used in computers nowadays. So according to a professor of MIT who is leading this project in the world, if we want to put the whole world data together using synthetic DNA, we can do that inside this teacup. And emission-free, pretty much for at least 1 million years. That's how powerful it is. So data issue sorted. Now, now let's talking about water consumption. There is a piece of research conducted by Cornell University, and they highlight that the AI water consumption can be up to 6.6 billion cubic meters by 2027, which will be 6 times the annual water consumption of Denmark as a country. And we know that Denmark is famous for the Little Mermaid, right? Imagine the Little Mermaid will be running short on water and she will never be able to swim all the way to rescue the Prince Charm. How sad will that be, right? But on a more serious note, the latest figure from the United Nations highlighted that by 2050, about 2/3 of the global population, so we're talking about 6 billion people, will be suffering from different level of water scarcity, especially in Africa. So does that mean we want to advance the technology as the own survival of our own people? Perhaps not. So what can be the solution? Part of the reason AI consumes a lot of water is because water is used as an effective cooling system in data center worldwide because it's cheap and it's really accessible. So if we can put the data center in a place which is cold enough, for example, outer space, where it's minus 270 degrees Celsius, problem solved. And that's not imagination. The European Commission already commissioned €2 million in the past 2 years to looking at feasibility study in collaboration with Airbus, HP, Orange, etc. And the conclusion is it's technically and economically and feasible to put the data center in the outer space. And they are planning to do that by deploying 1,300 building blocks by 2050 to help EU to become the carbon neutral continent in the world. So I guess there is like lots of interesting solutions. And very quickly, I know I talk too much, sorry. The last bit, very few people talking about is the e-waste generation. And we know actually at this moment, we are generating about 7 billion of e-waste every year. So if every single one of us has to carry that on a daily basis, that's 7.8 kilograms per person, which is very heavy. And as a result of development of AI and other high-performance computing, this is going to be, developed into another 10 times in the next 5 years. So we might have a situation like WALL-E. You will have little cute robots going around trying to put the e-waste in cubes. And the human has to evacuate to another planet, wandering around, trying to figure out where to find the next, habitable planet. That's not something we want. So one of the most drastic solutions is actually using food waste to create electronic components that is 100% recyclable. And the EU has been successfully piloting that again, using banana peels, orange, and natural adhesive like honey, etc., to glue them together, and it's actually working. So I guess it doesn't matter what kind of challenge we have. I think human beings, we have a species, we're intelligent enough to make things work.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Matt, can I just jump in on that?
Please.
Because I think there's quite an immediate point around the consumption of AI and the use of technology and the relationship with climate change, right? And so I know we're all on devices. We can see everybody on the phones and on laptops here. But I think there's a real focus on the circular economy and recycling devices right now. And also the move more, I know you were talking about 2050, but right now, like there's a real focus on the green data center and how do we drive a sustainable data center, right? And I think that's something that all of us in this room and all the technology companies are focused on right now is how do we really ensure that we reduce down this energy consumption? Because we know it's going to increase the more and more we consume and use and deploy AI. We've got an immediate issue on our hands. Yep. We've only just seen, and there's plenty of Americans in the room, what's happened recently in LA with the fires. So this is urgent. And I think certainly from a Dell Technologies perspective, we are solely committed to driving sustainable technology, right? And Michael is very fixed on the view around the circular economy. All aspects of your devices are all recycled, and that's really important. But we've got to continue this in the short term along with the longer term 2050 view.
Yep.
I think that's really important because if we're talking about the fire which happened in Los Angeles, the economists predict that the economic impact of loss of this one fire alone can be up to 275 billion US dollars. And looking at the current global GDPs in terms of country rankings, that fire alone can be ranked number 45 in the country for GDP and more than the annual GDP of Qatar, New Zealand as country, which is mad. And I think it's quite important, I think for lots of very senior corporate leaders in the room, how can we develop our economy in a way that is not at the cost of our future generations' prosperity is hugely important.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that up. And I'm really grateful that we got to cover bias, but also the concept of how we can leverage some of this technology and research to think more carefully about the environment. I want to get onto a second theme, and I might need to push us through a little bit before I get into big trouble. But the second theme I wanted to get onto, and Margareta, I'm going to start with you, is around accessibility. Making sure that we spread the use of this technology in a fair, equitable, even way. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about, Margareta, is some of this early evidence of the different use rates of AI between men and women, and what you're seeing from your perspective.
Yeah, so I mean, we've done a lot of research on this, and because we provide the infrastructure for a lot of the LLMs and for AI tools, honestly, we're not seeing a massive difference between the take-up, right? This is about all types of inclusion, and I think we are seeing a full adoption of AI when people understand how to use it, right? And the great thing about it is it's not that difficult. Once people have access to it, and I know, and we're so grateful that Cisco is here, accessibility is key to technology, right, and connectivity. But I think actually it's not about per se whether more men are using it more or more women are using it. That's not the case of it. What we really want to see is actually more females coming through with AI STEM research, right? We want to see greater representation in the data sets. So I don't think that the inclusion issue around the deployment is a problem. In fact, I know from a Dell Technologies perspective right now, we are embracing it. We've got a full-on rollout program right across Dell for all our staff, right? So it's not saying one cohort over another. Everybody has to adopt it, and we're monitoring it, and it's pretty extensive and rigorous. But I think actually the real issue is around gender equality and gender, I think the investment of female founders with AI startups, right? That's a real issue. We're just not seeing that come through, right? And so that's a real concern right now. I also think the point around representation. So right now in the UK alone, we're only seeing 12% of females are AI researchers, right? In terms of the whole bucket of researchers. And then I also think that the issue there is around funding models as well, that we're just not seeing enough investment going into female-funded AI organizations as well. So the startup space is a concern in terms of inclusion, but actually deployment and usage of AI is not so much of an issue, right? We're seeing widespread adoption when organizations choose to adopt AI.
I mean, just talking about that funding principle, I've seen some really good advocacy in the last year or two in this market in particular. That's really trying to encourage in much more funding towards women startup founders. So that I think that's at least the advocacy side.
And we're seeing actually, well, on that, we're seeing females in particular are advancing in terms of, like, they're very particularly strong in terms of AI, biology, in terms of STEM research, and then in terms of healthcare as well. So those kind of three areas of startups in terms of technology are really coming through for female founders. But we need more investment, right? And the funding model is prohibitive for female founders. That's got to change, right? Particularly in the UK, but also right across EMEA and North America too, right? There's just not enough money going into female-founded businesses.
On that concept of advocacy and storytelling, Vivian, tell us a little bit about how storytelling can help make the case and how women can participate in those stories.
So I think, there are two parts of it, right? One is storytelling, but then also using digital platforms to really emphasize and broaden these stories. And I'm so glad on this panel here already, there were so many great stories told. We had Little Mermaid, or, in the mythical context of, like, AI is maybe not functioning as we want it to be, but these are already stories that stick, right? And you ideally want to be using storytelling in a way that you obviously can stick the message, but also be authentic with it. And I think we can thereby really use and share experiences that sometimes are overlooked, right? We need to be much louder about all of these data issues that we have with it, because we said it already, but data is one of the crucial parts to also then again enable us and use the AI topic. So I feel like one is really putting this into great stories and then shouting about it and highlighting some of these things that are not going as well as we would like them to be. And again, this really brings out then, challenge some of the norms, drives more of the innovation, and brings it on a wider scale. And when it comes to maybe also bringing down the complexity, one of the parts of why women find it sometimes so difficult is really the complexity, the male dominance, the education around the confidence gap. And I feel like if we are able to really narrow it down and break it down, then we are getting to some stage of where we can really shout even louder about it. We all know it sometimes. We could talk, for hours. I think if you would put all of us, we would be happily talk to you in an hour. But breaking it down to a minute is sometimes so hard. And I feel like using digital tools, like, for example, LinkedIn, to shout even more about all of these different things, because it is a business network. And I feel like you can empower people, you can create a sense of belonging, you can connect people on different areas that have maybe not been connected. And I love that for these conferences. So use other the tool to stay connected, to see what maybe these people out who are leaving this room today also maybe continue doing. And I think they're, again, a bit of a room check, because I feel like LinkedIn is sometimes a bit of an overlooked one. There is this kind of really lovely Darth Vader meme where, on LinkedIn, he's like, so many great things, right? He's leading everything. But if you in truth look into, he's just the assistant to the emperor. And I feel like there we just want to be a bit like, obviously bring this authenticity also to that space. You don't want to blow it up, and you don't want to be, oh, I'm so honored and all of these things. Of course, yes, you are honored to maybe be here today on stage, but bring this authenticity also in it with these stories together. So there, my quick check-in again. Who has a LinkedIn account, maybe? I guess a lot of you. Who of you, if I would ask to put your LinkedIn account forward and say, oh, I'm having it perfectly updated on all of it is out there what I want to communicate? Yes, and I mean, honestly, this is the case for so many people, but that is a huge advantage, because if you invest, let's say, kind of an action item, 30 minutes this week, go in, update what you have been doing, what are the skills you're driving, what you're standing for, what you're passionate about, and you will see how you can connect more and even shout more about the important topics that we are discussing here today. So again, I think storytelling and digital tools create visibility, create inclusion, and can drive more innovation.
Great, thank you. I'm going to get to Jen and Liz, and then we'll do some very quick closing remarks. So Jen, maybe you could give us an example of how you can deploy some of this technology to think about inclusion and how collaboration's been helpful there.
I mean, I think very quickly there's no better illustration of how we can create inclusion is through tap technology. So those of you that travelled here today on public transport, you'd have tapped your way around, to take your payments. Now, when that originally started, and bear in mind now 2/3 of payments around the globe are now taken through that tap technology with a card or a digital wallet. When that started, the merchant, the seller, had to go out and buy a technology and put it on a counter and invest in this capital expenditure up front or rental. Don't have to do that anymore. Yeah. It's now all about tap on phone. So now every micro merchant, every seller, if they've got a phone, they can now download an app and accept a digital payment through a technology they already had. And I think this is a way that we're creating financial inclusion by allowing them to take digital payments all over the globe. 110 markets now can enable this. Not just on smartphones, but also on smart feature phones, which means we're able to bring this to continents where there's network technology challenges. So I think just that simple tap technology that started off in one market and with one technology standard has just morphed into something that is creating inclusion, financial inclusion, and diversity.
Amazing.
Thank you, Jen. And
I think I'll very quickly touch on not so much inclusion from a product standpoint, which is what we do on a collaboration standpoint, but more around inclusion of our team. When you have a team of tens of thousands of folks, many people some just opt into learning new technologies. Others, we have a little bit of a top-down mandate in the team right now that everyone's job is going to be touched by AI, one way or the other. So we have a requirement for everyone on the team, and we're backing that up with some of the trainings that Fran's team is doing around AI. There's like 3 levels of courses that everyone needs to take. And to me, that is part of, bringing everyone in, not just the early adopters, but even the ones who are waiting and seeing, or might think that actually it's too complicated, for example. So that's another way for us to drive inclusion.
Great. Thank you so much. I want to thank you all so much genuinely for contributing in the way you have so meaningfully in this panel. I'm going to ask for maybe a 10-second final thought from each of you, and we'll start with Christina and go down the line, and then I will be in a lot of trouble, but we carry on. So, Christina, to you.
Thanks. So I co-chair the UN task group on pre-standardization of cityverse, where we're looking at how to use many different frontier technology to create people-centered digital future. As part of the exercise, we propose a new type of public-private partnership, which is people-centered, planet-friendly. So it doesn't matter whether it's an aging society or support women into leadership position, or people with disabilities, or from low-income communities. We want to ensure technology can be personalized to support them to flourish, and everyone will be happy. Drop down.
I think mine would be on digital leadership, right? I think we need more role models, both geopolitically and in the business world, to just stand up and say, we want responsible AI and adoption of it, right? And we want it to be more inclusive. And that means we want more female founders to find and source these startups coming through and AI tools. And so we want more funding behind that as well, really, to fuel this economy. So I think we need more leadership that's going to be very focused on a balanced society. And I think the previous speakers touched on that, earlier on as well, Matt.
Yeah, thank you.
For me, it's all about continued recognition that we are not self-made.
Yeah.
It's really important that we work as a team. We identify that network where together you can create strengths that a multiplier effect of those strengths, and therefore everyone can shine as one by doing that as a team and not continuing to be sort of self-focused.
I want to close with actually one of advice that I've been given when I was early on in my career, and it was the worst advice that I've been ever given. And it was, keep a low profile. And I'm just like, no, this is exactly what you should not do. So I know it's sometimes hard, and I know some of us women, we really struggle with putting ourselves out there and shouting about stuff, but we do have a lot of great women here in the room. We do have great allies here in the room. So for me, I would love to see this connection coming together more, and also seeing you kind of like shouting louder and creating these meaningful connections together.
Thank you.
When I think about what we're doing in the workday around agents, we're willing to give agency to a technology.
Yeah.
And so for everyone in the room, one of the best pieces of advice that I got from Fran about 3 years ago, no matter where you are in your career, is to think about, you have agency, you have power, right? So how do you make sure that you keep it and not give that away? And there's a couple of ways that I can think of right now is surround yourself with relationships that lift you up. And the second one is, I know I do this, so I don't want to generalize. We look for validation. But I think this is one of the things that I actually saw it as a quote that I loved. It said, you don't need validation, you're not a parking ticket. Right? Have that confidence.
Thank you. Please join me in thanking our tech trailblazers. Thank you.